Hi, so today we're going to be talking about this case study about Chris Kettering. He is a first-year social studies teacher, and he is an African-American male in a white, middle-class centered school. I think it said 98% of the population was in the school was white and middle class, and very conservative community, very narrow-minded community. So Chris comes into his senior government class wanting to start these projects with the students, and there are different things like recycling and toll booths, raising money for the athletic department and stuff like that. But Chris wants to make one of the options an AIDS walk. And none of the students seem interested at all. They seem quite against it. Well, Chris goes to the principal because he has to get all of these projects approved. The principal says no to the AIDS walk, and he comes up with some excuses at first, but then he's like, you got to get it approved by the school board, and it's not going to happen because we are a very conservative community. It's just not going to happen. They're going to be very against this. Chris is upset, so he's talking to one of his friends about it, a fellow teacher, a union representative, and he says, you need to move on, come back to it whenever you have tenure. This is not the way to start your first year. Chris is still upset, so he tries to get the students a little more interested by giving examples of like victims and their stories, and then also statistics, and making them a little more informed, because it's very obvious that students are very uninformed about the way that it's spread because of lack of good sexual education and stuff like that. And Chris is very frustrated by this, and even after telling them that you can't just get it from bumping into them in the street, and it's not exactly in the direct population that you think it is, the students still are very uninterested. They think, very narrow-minded still. I think that one of the main ideas of this, the big ideas, is that sometimes a lot of times students are going to come in with prejudices, and teachers are going to have prejudices. Parents are, your principal, and sometimes as a teacher it's hard to get past those. And sometimes it's not as outward as in this case study. It was very outward. And you knew that the prejudices were there. And sometimes they kind of lay behind, and maybe even the person doesn't realize that they have that certain prejudice. But as a teacher, it's your job to kind of work around that, work through it, and sometimes you're going to come against a lot of resistance. I think that Chris might have went about it in a hard way, because even though he knew that he was in a community that was very conservative and probably was not going, very Christian based, probably was not going to like this, he still was just trying to push his way in instead of trying to look at it from a new perspective. He started doing that the second day that he had talked about it, whenever he brought in an article about a victim's sister who was talking about the different types of the different things that happened, and it was very sad, and it did get the students a little bit emotionally involved with it, but he might have done that a little late, and instead of spending more time talking about the misinformation that the students had, and maybe even the basis of their misgivings, he just kind of got angry and eventually just kind of gave in. And I understand to some point, because there was lots of push going against him, but you can't let that affect the way that you're going to teach. So in my future classroom, situations like this can be very difficult. I don't know quite what I would do in this situation, but I think that One thing you do need to let the students maybe talk about in a safe place, talk about why they think the way that they do, and then maybe redirect them in like a better light. And also once you get that fire in them and get that understanding with them, I think that he was kind of going about in the right way of trying to get the students excited, and then having them work together to go to the board, go to the principal, write the letters, do it in the right way. But it seemed like it was almost a fight, like it was his fight, and he just wanted to show them all what was wrong with what they were doing and what they were believing. He could have did it in a different way, I guess. And then in my future classroom, I want to be open, and I want to be I want to try to not have my own prejudices. I mean, it seemed like he was very, very against this conservative community, and so maybe in some ways he had his own prejudices, not as outward maybe about them, but in my classroom I want to be open to everything, but I also want it to be a safe place where people can come and feel safe in that place and be able to share their views, but in a certain way. Like, they won't be able to say rude things about people and be able to get away with that. Yeah, so I just want my environment to be an open environment and a loving environment, and I want to be able to build those relationships so I can have those talks with those students.